this is an actual AP problem that showed up a few years ago. Free response problem. The graph of the function f shown above consists of a semicircle and 3 line segments. They're being very specific about those shapes because it means that we're going to be able to find some specific values as opposed to just estimating. But we'll get to that in just a second. Let g be the function given by g of x equals the integral from -3 to x of f of t dt. All right, so that is the graph of f. But then g of x, they're giving us this other kind of formula for it. Now, there is a relationship between f and g. Whenever you see a function that's defined as an integral, as it is with g right here, g is a function that's defined as an integral, take the derivative of it because you're going to use that information. It's not something they tell you to do, but just go ahead and do it. Whoa. No, you can use the second fundamental theorem of calculus where to take the derivative of a function that's defined as an integral, you plug the top number in for t. So if you plug an x in, you're just going to get f of x. And then what's the derivative of x? 1. Minus, plug in the bottom limit, times the derivative of -3, which is 0. So basically, g prime of x equals f of x. So this is the graph of f, but this is also g prime. Yeah? Yeah, you'll get used to seeing problems like this, and basically the big thing is anytime you see a function that's defined as an integral, go ahead and take its derivative and see if there's a relationship between that and something else in the problem. All right, I'm going to go up here and work part A. Part A is to find g of 0 and to find g prime of 0. I'm going to start with g prime just because that's a little bit easier. This is the graph of f, but it's also the graph of what? G prime. So what is g prime of 0? 1. Just looking at the graph. When the way that your answers work on the AP exam is that you have to write inside boxes. Only the part that you write inside the boxes is what's graded. So on the AP exam, I think it's helpful on the booklet, like you get a separate question booklet and a separate answer booklet. Is that the way it is in other AP exams? Okay, so if you write on your question booklet, this is g prime of x, that's not going to be graded. But somehow you need to tell the graders that you recognize that. So you could, like right here, you could say g prime of 0 equals 1 because f of x equals g prime of x. And then you don't need to say it anymore. All right, g of 0. What do you think? Okay, it has to do with the area under the curve. They basically define g of x as this right here. So if g of x is the integral from -3 to x of f of t dt, then g of 0 would be the integral from -3 to 0 of f of t dt. Okay, and the integral from -3 to 0 of f of t dt, this is the graph of f, so we're talking about the area under the curve between what and what? -3 and 0. And what shape is that? It's a trapezoid. Is it negative? Yeah, -3 to 0 is small to big. As long as your smaller number's on the bottom, then you're good to go. All right. so that area is going to be 1/2. The height is 3. Remember, the height is the distance between the parallel bases. And the length of the two bases is 2 plus 1. So 9/2. Yeah, you're going to need to know that formula. 1/2 the height times the sum of the bases. And their bases are the two parallel sides, and the height is the distance between the two parallel sides. All right, let's look at B. Find all the values of x in the open interval between -5 and 4 at which g attains a relative maximum. Justify your answer. We're looking for where g has a relative max. Well, what's that the graph of? G prime. Okay, so think back to last chapter. G will have a max where G prime is changing from positive to negative. So where does that occur? Good. At x equal 3. Because, and personally, I like to write f of x equals G prime of x changes positive to negative. I want everybody to know that I completely understand that f and g are the same thing. And remember that you have to justify in terms of what's given to you. And really, f is what was given to you, so you're supposed to justify it in terms of f, which by saying that f equals g prime, I am justifying it in terms of f. All right, C, find the absolute minimum value of g on the interval between -5 and 4, justify your answer. An absolute minimum will occur at a relative min or where else? At an end point. And your justification for an absolute min is a t-chart. Whoops. All right, so... and I'm looking for an absolute minimum of g, so I'm going to be doing x and g of x. Where does the relative minimum of g occur? -4, right. X equals -4. Are there any other relative minimums? No. Why would you not? As long as you write that. You've thought it, and therefore you need to write it. Okay, here he's saying there's no way that x equal -5 could be an absolute min. And the reason for that is that g is decreasing between -5 and -4, right? Because g prime is negative. Okay? If you want to write that, that's fine. Or what you can do is just find all of the actual values. Now, to find g of -4, g of -4 would be the integral from -3 to 4 of f of t dt. Sorry, -4. Now, do I have a problem with my limits of integration? Which one's smaller? -4. So that's really the same thing as negative integral from -4 to -3 of f of t dt. From the definition of g of x down here. All right, so the integral from -4 to -3 is this little triangle right here. Well, because an absolute minimum can only occur at a relative minimum or an endpoint. No. I mean, if you wanted to include the relative maximum, you could. All right, so technically the area of that triangle is 3/2. But because of this negative, it would be negative 3/2. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, the height is 2. So it's just 2 over 2, negative 1. Sorry, thank you. Okay, to find g of negative 5. Using this definition right here, g of negative 5 would be the integral from negative 3 to negative 5 of f of t dt. But it would be negative integral from negative 5 to negative 3 of f of t dt. All right, now if I'm going from negative 5 to negative 3, okay, someone suggested 0. Do you agree? Yes, because you've got the two areas, one's below and one's above, are exactly the same areas, but one's above and one's below, so they cancel each other out in terms of the integral. It would. All right, so g of 4 is going to be the integral from negative 3 to 4 of f of t dt. So that's going to be this trapezoid. And then this section and that section. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to find the area of the trapezoid, and then you're going to add, I would say what you can do here is that you can find the area of the square minus the semicircle, these two little parts right here. It is a little bit of work. The problem, though, is that the T-chart is your justification. I think they're going to assign points for finding the values at your endpoints and the critical points. For right, I've seen a question where they assign points for showing the value of those endpoints. So at this point, I think you need to do it. Okay, so you're going to find the area of this trapezoid, then you're going to take the area of the square minus the semicircle, and then you've got a triangle, and then minus a triangle.